Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This file is being recorded for the August 2022 edition of Socialism for All, and it's an audiobook and discussion of To the Workers Who Support the Struggle Against the War and Against the Socialists Who Have Sided with Their Governments by Lenin from 1916. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and consider supporting on Patreon at patreon.com/socialismforall. There's a link to Patreon in the video description. So this piece was first published in the magazine Proletarskaya Revolutsiya No. 5, 1924. It was written at the close of December 1916, published according to the manuscript. The source is Lenin Collected Works, Progress Publishers, 1964, Moscow, Volume 23. Translated by M.S. Levin, the late Joe Feinberg, and others. HTML transcription and markup by R. Simbala, and it's in the public domain at the Lenin Internet Archive within the Marxists Internet Archive. Thanks as usual to MIA for hosting this and thousands of other free Marxist texts. Please go check them out, marxists.org. So let's get into the audiobook, which was written several years into World War I and just about a year before the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. The international situation is becoming increasingly clear and increasingly menacing. Both belligerent coalitions have laterally revealed the imperialist nature of the war in a very striking way. The more assiduously the capitalist governments and the bourgeois and socialist pacifists spread their empty, lying pacifist phrases, the talk of a democratic peace, a peace without annexations, etc., the sooner they are exposed. Germany is crushing several small nations under her iron heel with the very evident determination not to give up her booty except by exchanging part of it for enormous colonial possessions, and she is using hypocritical pacifist phrases as a cover for her readiness to conclude an immediate imperialist peace. England and her allies are clinging just as tightly to the colonies seized from Germany, part of Turkey, etc., claiming that in endlessly continuing the slaughter for possession of Constantinople, strangulation of Galicia, partition of Austria, the ruin of Germany, that they are fighting for a, quote, just peace. The truth, of which only a few were theoretically convinced at the beginning of the war, is now becoming palpably evident to an increasing number of class-conscious workers, namely that a serious struggle against the war, a struggle to abolish war and establish lasting peace, is out of the question unless there is a mass revolutionary struggle led by the proletariat against the government in every country, unless bourgeois rule is overthrown, unless a socialist revolution is brought about. And the war itself, which is imposing an unprecedented strain upon the peoples, is bringing mankind to this. The only way out of the impasse is compelling it to take giant strides towards state capitalism, and is demonstrating in a practical manner how planned social economy can and should be conducted, not in the interests of the capitalists, but by expropriating them, under the leadership of the revolutionary proletariat, in the interests of the masses who are now perishing from starvation and the other calamities caused by the war. The more obvious this truth becomes, the wider becomes the gulf separating the two irreconcilable tendencies, policies, trends of socialist activity, which we indicated at Simmerwald, where we acted as a separate left wing, and in a manifesto to all socialist parties and to all class-conscious workers issued on behalf of the left wing immediately after the conference. This is the gulf that lies between the attempts to conceal the obvious bankruptcy of official socialism and its representatives' desertion to the bourgeoisie and their governments, as well as the attempts to reconcile the masses with this complete betrayal of socialism on the one hand, and on the other, the efforts to expose this bankruptcy in all its magnitude, to expose the bourgeois policy of the social patriots who have deserted the proletariat for the bourgeoisie, to destroy their influence over the masses, and to create the possibility and the organizational basis for a genuine struggle against the war. The Zimmerwald right wing, which was in the majority at the conference, fought the idea of breaking with the social patriots and founding a Third International tooth and nail. Since then, the split has come to a definite fact in England, and in Germany, the last conference of the, quote, opposition, on January 7, 1917, revealed to all who do not willfully shut their eyes to the facts that in that country, too, there are two irreconcilably hostile labor parties working in opposite directions. One is a socialist party, working for the most part underground, and with Karl Liebknecht as one of its leaders. The other is a thoroughly bourgeois social patriot party, which is trying to reconcile the workers to the war and to the government. The same division is to be observed in every country of the world. At the Quintal Conference, the Zimmerwald right wing did not have so large a majority as to be able to continue its own policy. It voted for the resolution against the Social Patriot International Socialist Bureau, a resolution which condemned the latter in the sharpest terms, and for the resolution against social pacifism, which warned the workers against lying pacifist phrases, regardless of socialist trimmings. Socialist pacifism, which refrains from explaining to the workers the illusory nature of hopes for peace without overthrowing the bourgeoisie and organizing socialism, is merely an echo of bourgeois pacifism, which instills in the workers faith in the bourgeoisie, presents the imperialist governments and the deals they make with each other in a good light, and distracts the masses from the maturing socialist revolution, which events have put on the order of the day. But what transpired? After the Quintal Conference, the Zimmerwald right, in a number of important countries, in France, Germany, and Italy, slid wholly and entirely into the very social pacifism Quintal had condemned and rejected. In Italy, the Socialist Party has tacitly accepted the pacifist phrases of its parliamentary group and its principal speaker, Turati, though precisely now, when absolutely the same phrases are being used by Germany and the Entente, and by representatives of the bourgeois governments of a number of neutral countries, where the bourgeoisie has accumulated and continues to accumulate enormous war profits, precisely now their falsehood has been exposed. In fact, pacifist phrases have proved to be a cover for the new turn in the fight for division of imperialist spoils. In Germany, Kautsky, the leader of the Zimmerwald right, issued a similar meaningless and non-committal pacifist manifesto, which merely instills in the workers hope in the bourgeoisie and faith in illusions. Genuine socialists, the genuine internationalists in Germany, the Internationale Group, and the International Socialists of Germany, who were applying Karl Liebknecht's tactics in practice, were obliged formally to dissociate themselves from this manifesto. In France, Merheim and Borderon, who took part in the Zimmerwald Conference, and Raphael Dujan, who took part in the Quintal Conference, have voted for meaningless and objectively thoroughly false pacifist resolutions, which in the present state of affairs are so much to the advantage of the imperialist bourgeoisie that even Jouot and Renadel, denounced as betrayers of socialism in all the Zimmerwald and Quintal declarations, voted for them. That Merheim voted with Jouot and Borderon and Raphael Dujan with Renadel is no accident, no isolated episode. It is a striking symbol of the imminent merger everywhere of the social patriots and social pacifists against the international socialists. The pacifist phrases in the notes of a long list of imperialist governments, the same pacifist phrases uttered by Kautsky, Turati, Borderon, and Merheim Renadel, extending a friendly hand to the one and the other. All this exposes pacifism in actual politics as a means of placating the people, as a means of helping the governments to condition the masses to the continuation of the imperialist slaughter. This complete bankruptcy of the Zimmerwald flight has been still more strikingly revealed in Switzerland, the only European country where the Zimmerwaldists could meet freely, and which served as their base. The Socialist Party of Switzerland, which has held its congresses during the war without interference from the government, and is in a better position than any other party to promote international solidarity between the German, French, and Italian workers against the war, has officially affiliated to Zimmerwald. And yet, on a decisive question affecting a proletarian party, one of this party's leaders, the chairman of the Zimmerwald and Quintal conferences, a prominent member and representative of the Bern International Socialist Committee, National Councillor R. Grimm, deserted to the social patriots of his country. At the meeting of the Parteivorstand of the Socialist Party of Switzerland on January 7, 1917, he secured the adoption of a decision to postpone indefinitely the party congress, which was to be convened for the express purpose of deciding the fatherland defense issue and the party's attitude towards the Quintal Conference decisions condemning social pacifism. In a manifesto signed by the International Socialist Committee and dated December 1916, Grimm describes as hypocritical the pacifist phrases of the governments but says not a word about the socialist pacifism that unites Merheim and Jouot, Raffin Dujean and Renaudel. In this manifesto, Grimm urges the socialist minorities to fight the governments and their social patriot hirelings, but at the same time, jointly with the social patriot hirelings in the Swiss party, he endeavors to bury the party Congress, thus rousing the just indignation of all the class-conscious and sincerely internationalist Swiss workers. No excuses can conceal the fact that the Parteivorstand, or executive decision of January 7, 1917, signifies the complete victory of the Swiss social patriots over the Swiss socialist workers, the victory of the Swiss opponents of Zimmerwald over Zimmerwald. The Grütlianer, that organ of the consistent and avowed servants of the bourgeoisie in the labor movement, said what everyone knows is true when it declared that social patriots of the Greulich and Pfluger type, to whom should be added Seidel, Huber, Lang, Schneeberger, Durr, etc., want to prevent the Congress from being held, want to prevent the workers from deciding the fatherland defense issue, and threaten to resign if the Congress is held and a decision in the spirit of Zimmerwald is adopted. Grimm resorted to an outrageous and intolerable falsehood at the Parteivorstand and in his newspaper, the Berner Tagwacht of January 8, 1917, when he claimed that the Congress had to be postponed because the workers were not ready, that it was necessary to campaign against the high cost of living, that the, quote, left were themselves in favor of postponement, etc. In reality, it was the left, i.e. the sincere Zimmerwaldists, who, anxious to choose the lesser of two evils and also to expose the real intentions of the social patriots and their new friend, Grimm, proposed postponing the Congress until March, voted to postpone it until May, and suggested that the meetings of the cantonal committees be held before July. But all these proposals were voted down by the Fatherland Defenders, led by the chairman of the Zimmerwald and Kiental conferences, Robert Grimm. In reality, the question was, shall the Bern International Socialist Committee and Grimm's paper be allowed to hurl abuse at foreign social patriots, and, at first by their silence and then by Grimm's desertion, shield the Swiss social patriots? Or shall an honest internationalist policy be pursued, a policy of fighting primarily the social patriots at home? In reality, the question was, shall the domination of the social patriots and reformists in the Swiss party be concealed by revolutionary phrases, or shall we oppose to them a revolutionary program and tactics on the question of combating the high cost of living, as well as of combating the war, of putting on the order of the day the fight for the socialist revolution? In reality, the question was, shall the worst traditions of the ignominiously bankrupt Second International be continued in Zimmerwald? Shall the leaders be kept ignorant of the things the party leaders do and say at the Parteivorstand? Shall revolutionary phrases be allowed to cover up the vileness of social patriotism and reformism, or shall we be internationalists in deeds? In reality, the question was, shall we in Switzerland too, where the party is of primary importance for the whole of the Zimmerwald group, insist upon a clear, principled, and politically honest division between the social patriots and the internationalists, between the bourgeois reformists and the revolutionaries, between the councillors of the proletariat who are helping it carry out the socialist revolution and the bourgeois agents or hirelings who want to divert the workers from revolution by means of reforms or promises of reforms, between the Grütlians and the Socialist Party, or shall we confuse and corrupt the minds of the workers by conducting in the Socialist Party the Grütlian policy of the Grütlians, i.e. the social patriots in the ranks of the Socialist Party? Let the Swiss social patriots, those Grütlians who want to operate their Grütlian policy, i.e. the policy of their national bourgeoisie, abuse the foreigners. Let them defend the inviolability of the Swiss party from criticism by other parties. Let them champion the old bourgeois reformist policy, i.e. the very policy that brought on the collapse of the German and other parties on August 4, 1914. We, who adhere to Zimmerwald in deeds and not merely in words, interpret internationalism differently. We are not prepared passively to regard the efforts, now definitely revealed and sanctified by the chairman of the Zimmerwald and Kiental conferences, to leave everything unchanged in decaying European socialism and, by means of hypocritical professions of solidarity with Karl Liebknecht, to bypass the real slogan of this leader of the international workers, his appeal to work for the regeneration of the old parties from top to bottom. We are convinced that on our side are all the class-conscious workers in all countries, who enthusiastically greeted Karl Liebknecht and his tactics. We openly expose the Zimmerwald right, which has deserted to bourgeois reformist pacifism. We openly expose Grimm's betrayal of Zimmerwald and demand convocation of a conference to remove him from his post on the International Socialist Committee. The word Zimmerwald is the slogan of international socialism and revolutionary struggle. This word must not serve to shield social patriotism and bourgeois reformism. Stand for true internationalism, which calls for the struggle, first of all, against the social patriots in your own country. Stand for true revolutionary tactics, which are impossible if there is a compromise with the social patriots against the revolutionary socialist workers. That is the end of the audiobook. So, up on the channel, I just put 8, this is the 8th in the series, texts from Lenin, all short texts between 10 and 30 minutes, basically, about nationalism and war. Lenin, of course, was writing about World War I and the rank betrayals that were going on within the world of socialism. Of course, what we know as communism or Marxism-Leninism broke away from this, established the Third Communist International, and set new standards for what it meant to be a Marxist. And I think that sadly, we need to relearn a lot of these lessons today. That's why I'm posting this. Also, we are covering more material about the emerging war, looking likely, between the US, EU, or NATO on one side, and Russia and its allies on the other. Open hostilities have not quite broken out yet, but it's a lot closer to open hostilities than it's been in a long time. And there are all kinds of social patriots. You look at somebody like a Vosh, people who claim to be socialist or whatever the hell he's claiming to be these days, but wind up just basically being Democrats, just wind up supporting the United States and its imperialism. And then other contrarian opportunists. Vosh is an opportunist of one type, and then there are opportunists of a contrarian bent who do the same thing. They side with a bourgeoisie, just not the United States. But same difference. I mean, we're talking about global capitalism at this point, fighting for liberation of the working class. This is a class struggle, and allying with any bourgeoisie is equally traitorous. There is so much work that needs to be done if the working class is going to have any kind of a revolutionary moment in the next, 10 to 20 years. And we got to step on it. What can I say? So did these texts to kind of lay the groundwork for that in this August 2022 edition of Socialism for All. And we're going to read next some texts very similar to what Lenin has done in these texts from modern-day communists such as the Union of Communists of the Ukraine, which make very similar calls. Anyway, what do you think? Leave a question or comment below. We'll continue the discussion in the comments section as always. Otherwise, thanks for listening. And thanks to the current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen, head to patreon.com/socialismforall. Every donation is encouraging. They're also materially helpful. Really appreciate it. They've allowed me to spend a lot more time creating content for this channel than I would have been able to do without that support. So again, much appreciated. If you like this channel, thank a patron, possibly become one. That support really matters. Then, after the content has been produced, engagement counts. So like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, even if it's just thanks or good video. All of that helps to encourage YouTube to recommend this content to more people. The audience has been expanding, and we want to see it keep expanding. This is a time of crisis for capitalism, and we really need to improve the left through agitation, education, and then organization. The organization part has to occur in your community with you. So look around, connect with whatever parties are in your area. If you're in a very desolate area, like very rural, remote, then see if you can connect with something on the state or maybe even the national level. But really, the organization needs to happen. Just having isolated individuals standing around wondering when things are going to change is not going to cut it. This is history that we have to write, and that means you. All right, thanks again, and we will catch you in the next video.